I grew up in a pretty difficult family, and I grew up with a lot of emotional abuse where I was never enough. Nothing I ever did was right. And I mean, like, Ivy League degrees, like, good grades, like, did everything. Not necessarily because I wanted to do it, but because I felt like that's what was expected of me. And so then you go to jobs, and I'm the person, and people will say that this is a positive, right? And for so many years, it was like a point of pride. And then burnout happened. But people were like, you under promise and over deliver. You will go. I always told people I'm the person that will go 150 miles an hour at work. From 9 to 5, I am giving you everything I got. I made a lot of decisions, especially early on, based on what I thought that I should do, or what somebody else was telling me I should do. And I actually think that I would have maybe been a lot happier if I made a lot of decisions when you're 18 or 25 years old based on what I want and what feels right to me, not so much what I think the world is going to expect of me.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of MomSub, the childcare app that connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. Today, I'm with Mariaelena Morales. She launched her own marketing company last year after working in the field for 14 years. She's done marketing for a wide variety of industries, from events to recruiting. She led communications for multiple theater companies and moved up several levels from associate to manager for an international travel company. Thanks for being here, Mariaelena.
Thank you so much.
So I see that you got your undergraduate degree in theater, and then you worked in that field before getting your degree in master's in marketing. So theater can be a tricky field for many people to work in, especially women, because people in that industry are judged based on appearance or even style if you're not necessarily on the stage, that whole way you put yourself together. And I wonder if that presented some challenges to you that affected your career, and specifically what you think the biggest challenge in your career was because you are a woman, whether that was in theater or marketing.
Wow. There's a lot there. There's a really important clarification I want to make. I got my undergraduate degree in history, and my first master's was in theater. But even within that history degree, my thesis was on theater. There was always this interest. I wanted to be part of that industry and part of that community. One of the biggest challenges in starting to work in the theater industry was actually that I was coming into it a bit later. So many people really start, very young, and they start, they're on stage, and then maybe they start working behind the scenes, et cetera. And I was coming at it a little bit later. So I felt like I had a bit more to prove. So there's that challenge, number one. Then I really started working primarily in audience services. So you are in this kind of caregiving role, right? It's, you have to be, I don't want to say necessarily placating, but you do have to be serving an audience constantly. So there are those expectations that you are going to show up in a particular way and present yourself in a particular way. You have to handle the difficult patrons sometimes, right? And as we know, sometimes being in those customer service roles, not the most fun. So there was that challenge. I have a very strong personality. I'm a very direct person. I'm very good at customer service. I'm very good in those audience services, but I also have those boundaries where, it made sometimes those difficult situations a little bit harder when people were just expecting that they were going to be able to walk all over me. And I was saying, no, there are rules, right? And I can't break it for you, right? Like, I can't let you into the show 30 minutes late and walking all over people and distracting the actors, right? Like, this is an experience and it's not just for you, right? And so sometimes having to be the one setting that line when you're there at 8 p.m. and there's no other admin staff, right? And you are a young woman, you are petite, right? I've always looked a lot younger than I am. So there is then that expectation of people are going to be able to walk all over you. And when you start showing backbone, then it's, as women, we're told, no, right? You are difficult or you are abrasive, right? They would never say this about, a man, even a young man. So I think that was the hardest challenge as a woman. Another related one is, and I think a lot of women deal with this, when I started working, it was also when we started getting smartphones and you could start having work emails on your phone. And I was in a customer support role. And so you don't want to, you see an email come in from an upset customer at 10 p.m. or from your boss at like 3 p.m. on a Saturday, and you want to respond. And so you lose that work-life balance very quickly. It took me years to get that back. And now when I'm working with, younger people, not just women, but I see them start to break those boundaries early in their career, I tell them, hold on to that, because it's very easy for those boundaries to disappear. You will spend years trying to claw that time back and be able to set those boundaries again for yourself.
Do you think that yourself as a woman and other women have a tendency to not draw those boundaries because we grow up with that expectation that we're nurturing, that we're always helpful, that we're always there, that we're kind, that we're, that we're supposed to be, perfect sometimes? I don't hear that as much about perfectionism from men as I do from women.
Yeah, and I think there is I think gender plays a big part in it, for sure, right? And women, and I'm not a mom. I am a very proud, happy auntie. But yeah, we are expected to be, sort of dutiful and doting and caring. And if disaster strikes, we're supposed to just pick everyone up and figure it out, right? There's a cultural aspect too, right? I'm Puerto Rican, from the island, so I come from that culture where, yes, like the women are the caregivers, right? My mother was a stay-at-home mom. So you grow up with, yes, like men do a lot. I'm not saying they don't. And especially nowadays, like I see a lot more men being part of like the home responsibilities and caregiving, and that's lovely. But women still have this like centuries old, like sort of inherited cultural feeling that we are supposed to be the caregivers. I think for me, that sense of perfectionism also is, I grew up in a pretty difficult family, and I grew up with a lot of emotional abuse where I was never enough. Nothing I ever did was right. And I mean, like Ivy League degrees, like, good grades, like did everything, not necessarily because I wanted to do it, but because I felt like that's what was expected of me. And so then you go to jobs and I'm the person, and people will say that this is a positive, right? And for so many years, it was like a point of pride. And then burnout happened. But people were like, you under promise and over deliver. You will go, I always told people I'm the person that will go 150 miles an hour at work. From 9 to 5, I am giving you everything I got. At 5, I'm leaving though, right? Eventually I got there and I said, I'm leaving, but I will absolutely leave it all on the line when I am here at work. And a lot of that comes from like work for me was the one place where I knew what I was doing. And I knew that what I was doing was right. And then what I was doing was good. And no matter what else I was facing and what else I was being told in my personal life, that became a real point of pride for me of I can show up here and no one can touch this. Like I know that this is where I'm secure.
Mm-hmm. So who was putting on these unrealistic burdens? Was it both parents? Was it extended family?
Yeah.
Was it just you? Was this a culture for all of your siblings?
No, just me.
Just you?
Yeah.
Were you the oldest? Were you the smartest? Were you the one that they thought was going to, I don't know, lift them out of something? Why do you think, was this?
I have a different personality from a lot of
very
them.
direct, you
Yeah,
said.
I am very direct. I never had the same like sense of humor. I never had the same sensibilities maybe. I didn't look like a lot of them.
Like your family members.
This is one side of the family. I look a lot like my dad's side of the family. I spent most of my time with my mom's side of the family.
So
they're
you
very
looked-
different. So they are very, very thin. I was not very, very thin. I was, louder. I was more blunt, right? So I didn't necessarily fit those stereotypes. I wasn't necessarily like worried, super worried about clothes and, makeup and how I looked and, primping and preening and all that stuff. I was a little bit more of a tomboy. And so all of those things, I think, contributed to that. It wasn't until I was about 30 that I started to get some answers where I was actually diagnosed as autistic.
At 30.
Yeah. 30, 31. Yeah, but it was as an adult, which is a very difficult process. And then suddenly, like, your entire life sort of gets recontextualized because it was all like, yes, I was different. But what really was hard for me was that nobody ever stopped to ask why. It was always just you're different and that's wrong, as opposed to, oh, that's who you are. So now family is incredibly important to me, but my definition of family is very different. And so now I have a chosen family, and there are people who we are all very different. We don't always get along. We don't always have the same opinions. We sometimes upset each other, like I think a normal family would. But it's this unconditional sense of, oh, that's just who you are. Right. And we're just going to take time to understand that and learn and maybe do it better next time. And we're all just going to make room for each other and everything that we learn about each other. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. And your chosen family, are they not biologically related, and are they connected to your career? Did you find this chosen family through your work and your career endeavors and those kinds of pursuits? And explain that for others who may be listening, who may be in a similar situation.
So I have one, I always say, so it's a chosen family. They're the best family because I did handpick them all myself. They are, one of them I am related to, my cousin who still lives back on the island. And there's been that struggle, right, of she is still very close to them and all of my relatives are still very much her family. So we have had to navigate that. But we're in a really good place with that now. The rest of my family, yeah, mostly the majority, actually, now that you mention it, did come through a professional connection. I've got these two, we're not related, so they are technically friends, but I call them, I call them the little brother I always wanted and the big brother I never asked for, which makes him really happy. But the little brother I met, he was an actor at one of the theaters I worked at, and we just connected and, built that relationship over time. And the big brother is actually his best friend, who I also met and got to know. There are people who I'm very close with now, and they are, I have basically a sister, and I met her through a mutual friend. I'm not even close with that person anymore, but she and I connected, and over time, it's just these genuine connections that you make, right? And part of how my autism shows up is I hate small talk. As I think you know, right? We met last week and we had this very in-depth conversation. And so when I meet people and I can have that really genuine conversation with them and that genuine connection, it doesn't always work out. There are people I thought were going to become part of the chosen family that didn't, and there was no fallout, right? But that connection just didn't quite mesh. And then there are just people that I am sick, or I need to have surgery, and somebody will like fly in from 4 states away, right? In the same way that you would expect family to drop everything and be here, there are those people that for years, and some I met in school, right? Some I met through MFA programs or, my marketing degree. But yeah, quite a few of them have just come through either an academic or a professional connection that just grew deeper.
Interesting, because so many people struggle to integrate family that they have over here and career, but you used career to build a family village that you felt was missing, the right kind of supportive family village that was missing. And you say that you're an auntie, so
Yeah.
you have interactions with kids. Was there any part of your career or upbringing that made you decide, I don't want kids, or is it just the phase you're in life or the people that you've met or not met? Is this a conscious decision?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it became a conscious decision eventually, but there was always this feeling. I grew up knowing that there is no guarantee that if you have a kid, you will love that kid. Because I was one of those people. I was a kid who did not feel like I was necessarily loved or wanted or accepted. And so I just knew that if I had a kid, there was no guarantee. And I just thought, I can't ever put somebody through that. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to be in that situation where I have a kid and I feel that, So eventually, I think that feeling was always there. And again, it does have to become a conscious choice when you're a woman, because we are just kind of raised and expected, you're going to be a mom. That's the career trajectory for every woman. You're born thinking that. One of my favorite stories is, there was this, part of the, chosen family. There was this little girl. She's delightful. She's now not so little, but when she was about 7, she asked me if I had kids, because she never saw me with kids, but all the other women she saw around her mom's age all had kids. And I said no. And in her very 7-year-old way, she just goes, why? And her dad is mortified, right? Because as adults, we know, we don't ask. And he was like, no, we don't ask that. And I said, no, it's I get it. You shouldn't ask that. But also for me, it's fine. I said, it was my own personal decision. And I said, one day when you are older, you get to make that decision, right? And you can decide to have them or decide not to have them. For me, it started off as it came from that emotional place of I don't ever want to live through that on the other side of it or put someone else through that. And then I just really started building a life for myself that is actually quite independent. I love traveling by myself. I like the fact that I can make decisions for myself. I'm single and I don't have kids and I don't have pets. So it really is this life where if I don't want to do anything on a particular day, I just don't. And, the only person that is, really depending on me at that point is me. At the larger scale, yes, there are kids, that want to spend time with me, which to me is that's one of the most moving things for me, is that there are kids that see me and get really happy to see me and that they want to spend time with me, and they're constantly asking, when are you coming for a sleepover, or when can I sleep over at your house? And for me, what I really work for is to make sure that I am there for them in that way, because it's not ever something that I've really known is family actually wanting to spend time with me. So the fact that there are these kids that see me as somebody that is a safe space, that to me that's the biggest success.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all these successes you've had in your career. And I wonder if your career trajectory was influenced by this idea of, I'm going to separate myself from family. I'm going to dive into career. It's going to be my whole life, nonstop, day and night, right?
Yeah.
Give it 150%, like you said, and how your career evolved as a result of you knowing more and more, this is what's important to me. And then you said you hit burnout. So obviously, even if you don't have children, you have to have a personal life. You like to travel. You like to do these other things. So most people think of burnout as something that happens, when the mom, the working mom's trying to juggle the career and the kids.
Marriage,
right.
etc.
But and you're not married. Mm-hmm. So you are independent and you hit burnout. How did that happen? How did your career, get to that point as a result of some of these things that happened in your past?
It was career burnout and it was also personal burnout. And I think those two things, I think it's really important for people to know, and especially for women to know, that those two things are not separate. As much as I was I love going into an office. I know that that's not a popular view right now, but it's one of the things that I miss now about being freelance, is that structure. If you go to an office and there's this commute where you can ease into your day, right? And I had this job, it was an hour-long commute, and I would leave the office and I would say, you have the hour on this commute, on this train, this bus, whatever, to stew about whatever happened. But the minute you walk through that door, it's done, right? And so I had a very clear division between work and life in terms of how you spend your time. But there is no, like, we're one person. So there is no way to actually fully separate the effect and like the toll that it has on you, right? If you're going through something personally, physically, emotionally, it's going to impact work. If work is really difficult, it's going to impact your day, right? So it really started around COVID. I worked for a student travel company. Travel was disrupted, education was disrupted, so it was just coming at us from everywhere. We're dealing with parents who are dealing with like money issues, right? So many people were unemployed, figuring out refunds, et cetera. It was, the comments coming in on social media, and as being the marketing person, like, you're the one suddenly getting this like barrage, right? Of what are really customer support issues. And I did that for about a year and a half. And the toll was terrible. We were also going through a corporate buyout. So then like there's that, right? On top of just like your work is hard, there's also this whole new company, this whole new culture that you have to deal with. When companies get bought out and merge, you lose friends, right? People leave. On top of that, COVID. So it was a lot. And then I think it's really important, and for people, and I do think that one of the great things that has happened since COVID is we talk a lot more about mental health, and it's talked a lot more about at work. But I think it needs to be said all the time that what happens at work can impact us, mentally and emotionally, and what's happening in our personal life, compounds. And right before COVID, I was actually diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. So my threshold for burnout now is a lot lower, right? And it has taught me to sort of know what I'm up against day to day and on a given week. But the burnout during COVID was really hard. Something that I actually realized when we went into lockdown is how overscheduled I'd become. Going back to that sense, right, of women, like, I would say yes to everything. I actually had to, and this is a great tip for anybody listening out there that's trying to figure out how to get some time back. We fall into this trap of if we see an open spot on that calendar, we think the spot is available, and so we fill it. And I actually had to physically start blocking off my own me time as a reminder to myself. No, when somebody would say, "Are you free on Tuesday?" I wouldn't say like, "Oh yeah, I'm not doing anything, ergo I am free." I would actually start telling people, no, I can't, like, we're going to look at 2 weeks out maybe, right? Because it's not all urgent. It doesn't have to all be done this week. You don't have to be there for everybody all of the time. And so one of the best things was actually that lockdown just like cleared my entire schedule. And it then, reopening was hard. Having those things come back into your calendar, especially because I was at a point where I couldn't schedule myself the same way, right? Because my body just couldn't support that anymore. And I think also, honestly, being diagnosed with autism has helped, because I know my own boundaries. Before, I would just, there's a social burnout that happens. I think people call it autistic burnout, because socially and like all the stimulation gets really, really hard and draining. And because I'm so outgoing, because I'm so, loud and direct, I just kind of always assumed that I had to be outgoing, that I had to be extroverted. We assume that extroversion means social and loud. It doesn't. It just means that that's where you get your energy from. But I get my energy actually from being alone and just from having like my own quiet space. And so it took me a really long time to realize, actually pushing myself to be so social. And I have a job where I'm in such constant, connection with other people. It took me a really long time to realize I can't actually do that outside of work too, And so then I started to learn certain things about myself. For example, I can't socialize on Friday nights. If I have been talking to people all week long, The last thing you want to do is invite me out for dinner and drinks on Friday when I have absolutely nothing left in the tank. It's going to be miserable for me. It's going to be miserable for you. And then it's going to take me about a week to recover. So I've really had to I had to learn that about myself. And then I had to do what's really, really hard. And I have a friend who actually just sent me a letter and said, you have given me strength I didn't know I had, just from seeing how you advocate for your own boundaries. Is I have had to go to people and say, this is not personal. I would love to hang out with you at a different time. I cannot do this. This is it. I had a friend who made it his mission to take me out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Everything is out of my comfort zone. So it's lovely, but we also need to pick our moments and our battles, because I also need time to recover, whereas you recover by being with people, right? So there's just this, just very long story short, there is a lot of burnout that happens from work. There's burnout that I think we're far more attuned to the work burnout. It's easier to recognize when work is stressful. It's easier to recognize when you're snapping at people in the office. It's easier to recognize when you're skipping all your lunches or you're working late. And it's easier to recognize when that's bleeding into your home life. It is a lot harder to recognize when the burnout is happening from the home life. Right? It's a lot harder to recognize, actually, I'm really, really miserable and I'm hanging out with people I love. And this is making me miserable. Like something is wrong, there's a problem here. Or at least something is going on. Right. And that's actually what led me to be evaluated and diagnosed. Is I spent a summer hanging out with people that I absolutely love. And I was shaking the whole time and miserably and it was too much. And that's what led me to realize, this is not the experience I should be getting from people that I that I actually choose to be around and that I want to be around. And I think that burnout is a lot harder to, as women especially, to recognize, because nobody wants to admit being around my kids or my husband or my friends, right, is too much.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That you've got so much self-awareness from everything that you've gone through. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if this new move to have your own business, right? Your LinkedIn profile shows last year, near the end of last year, you launched your own business and you're no longer listing that you're working for somebody, although you have clients, of course. But was this intentional, something you planned a lot? Did you, end up losing or leaving a position and just decided to try it? How did that happen? And how has that helped you with all the things that you've been describing today?
So I left my old position last August. I did not actually start my own firm until this spring. And I made a very conscious decision to just take time to figure out what the next step was, which is scary, and daunting, especially, as a single woman. Right? There's no safety net. There is no second income coming. But knowing I had been moving from job to job to job, trying to, get away from the burnout, right? You think that the burnout is here, and so I just need to go somewhere else. And you just take the first lifeboat that comes. But you actually haven't resolved any of the burnout, right? So it kept building and compounding, and it got to a point where I just knew I was not in the right place, and I did not want to just go to the next place. I wanted to take time and really heal a little bit, or try to heal a little bit, and then really figure out, where do I want to go? And in that searching, I realized that the hardest, the scariest thing that I was up against in a job search was that there's really no way to tell what company culture you're walking into. And that to me was paralyzing, especially because you grow up with emotional trauma, it's kind of always there. And so a toxic work environment hits me a little differently because I put so much emphasis on having work be the safe space, right? So when work is not the safe space, everything else just kind of crumbles, right? And I just went to myself and I said, I've been in situations that, and I'm not calling out any, employer, these are not bad places to work at. For me, they were not good places, right? Because of who I am, my background. And I thought, I've now been in like 5 different places in 5 different years that just are not a good fit. I cannot handle a 6th one. I was like, if I go into another place, it will absolutely break me, right? So I was really taking some time, and I talked with someone who said, you actually, the marketing, hiring market right now is very, it swings every few years, but right now it's very focused on, everybody's looking for, you need to have all your experience in this one industry. Like, everybody's looking for those immediate results, right? Come in and just know the job immediately and do exactly what you've done everywhere else here. And I'm the opposite. You mentioned it at the beginning, right? Like, I've worked in so many different industries. I don't have that. And so it was just becoming also this very demoralizing job search. And I had a great conversation with a former professor who said, have you ever considered going freelance? And I said, no. I mean, like, I've thought about it, but then I really like knowing where my paycheck is coming from, like the security of it, right? When everything else feels so up in the air, job security is phenomenal. And I thought, he said, if you've been in so many different industries, any client would really benefit from you being able to have this breadth of experience that you can pull from, right? You can try things that maybe they haven't considered because they're so focused on where they are. And he said, if your biggest concern right now is culture, being your own boss and setting your own culture is the perfect solution to that, right? And I thought, well, the only thing that's kept me from doing it is the job security and the, financial stability. I said, but right now, I don't have a paycheck, and I will say, like, I realize this is a lot of privilege because I am single and don't have kids. So I don't own a home. I just own my car. But I was able to save quite a bit so that I did have that freedom to say, I'm going to leave this job and I can take a year to figure out what the next step is and to start working towards that. So I also realized that not everybody is in that position. It was still terrifying, right? And it's still a stressful thing because, at the end of the year, what do you do? But it really, that was the first time that I started thinking, maybe this is the time to try, right? Like, if not now, when?
Yes.
And then I have a great mentor who had been helping me through the job search and helping me figure out what I wanted next. And when I told him, so somebody suggested that I do this thing and I don't know. And at that point, I mean, I'm so burnt out, right? And and I could like barely string words together. And he got so excited because he thought, I really think that it's the right move for you. But he said, I didn't want to say it. Like, I wanted you to get here. And so, and he really helped me, and he still helps me, start my business and grow my business. So it is really nice. And he's become now part of, the chosen family. So really just having that network. And I don't mean network in like the LinkedIn way, but having that like support system for somebody who like you think you're doing it all alone, right? And in many ways you are, right? I'm going through life alone. I don't have relatives to count on. Like, I have a great chosen family, but it's still not the same thing. And you become very self-sufficient and you become very independent and you don't want to ask for help, right? And it's very hard to ask for help because you've never grown up being able to ask for help or to think that you were going to get help. So to just have people offer the help and just be there to support is that was unexpected, and that made the decision. And listen, it might still not work out, right? In a year I might not be doing this solo and I may be back with a company, but I never thought, if you told me 20 years ago when I was starting my career that I would one day be in business for myself, I never would have thought it.
Well, congrats for taking the leap. All these things that you've done. I want to know if you could look back to an earlier time, knowing then what you know now. What's one thing, if you could describe quickly, that you would change and why?
I think I would not have tried so hard to hit other people's expectations. I think it would have taken a little bit more time to at least give myself that room to admit that what I wanted was okay, right? I made a lot of decisions, especially early on, based on what I thought that I should do or what somebody else was telling me I should do. And I actually think that I would have maybe been a lot happier. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything in the long run, but in terms of the, benchmarks you hit. But I think that I would have maybe just been a lot happier if I made a lot of decisions when you're 18 or, 25 years old based on what I want and what feels right to me, not so much what I think the world is going to expect of me.
Thank you for sharing everything that you shared today, including the emotion that you shared today, really letting people know who may be struggling with some of those same things, that they're not the only one. And we thank you for watching today's episode of Women in Work. If you were inspired by today's story, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, or subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you or anyone you know is seeking childcare, you can go to momsub.com. That's momsub, like a substitute mom, and share the needs that you have for childcare, and we will give you a video interview of the match that's going to fit your needs. Now, remember that your career, your choices are yours to define, and we want you to spread your love and encouragement to other women who need it.